Hurricane Katrina made landfall in Louisiana on August 29, 2005 as a Category 3 storm. This was the costliest storm on record. Direct damage of $108 billion resulted from the storm, with an economic impact of $250 billion. 1,833 people were killed as a result of the storm. This was the first time a major city in the United States was ordered completely evacuated. However, it was not issued until 19 hours prior to landfall. Unlike acts of terror, natural disasters such as hurricanes are not preventable events, and disaster recovery relief efforts are unavoidable. Hurricane Katrina response issues. A critical review of the problematic Katrina relief efforts carried out by the Federal Emergency Management Agency provided 38 recommendations to improve their response to future disaster relief efforts to deploy sufficient numbers of trained personnel in emergencies in a timely fashion. Suggestions to develop reliable communication systems and management controls to improve response capacity, along with relationship development between states and local governments, were also identified. This report from the Bipartisan Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives conducted an investigation on the coordination of the local, state, and federal authorities with regards to the emergency response to Hurricane Katrina. Over 20 federal, state, and local government entities, along with private organizations, contributed to response and relief efforts in Katrina similar to Hurricane Maria. The attempted Zazi terrorist attack did not include private organization response team composition. The committee findings addressed what went right or wrong in the response to the natural disaster. Specifically, they identified the delay evacuation response, the failure to provide supplies and equipment quickly, the misspent cost failures of the relief effort, and the government failures at all levels to react in a more effective manner. The response from the Red Cross, Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, the United Way, and the National Volunteer Organization Active in Disaster were also discussed. It turns out their responses were far more effective than government entities due to their rapid mobilization in response to Katrina. Maria originated from a well-defined tropical wave that departed the west coast of Africa on September 12, 2017. By September 17th, Maria intensified into a hurricane. By September 18th, Maria became a Category 5 hurricane. After crossing Dominica, Maria's intensity dropped just enough to be classified as a Category 4 storm. Maria crossed Puerto Rico, causing severe damage. It is the third costliest storm on record behind Katrina in 2005 that made landfall in New Orleans, and Harvey in 2017 that made landfall in Houston, Texas. The economic impact is estimated at $90 billion in Puerto Rico alone. The electric grid in Puerto Rico was nearly destroyed by Maria. Most transmission lines were downed in the storm. The official death toll on Puerto Rico is at 65 persons. There is an expectation that that number will increase as more of the island is opened up. Recovery plans and changes. 6 months after the hurricane, FEMA declared that electricity and water were restored to most of the island. Some areas remain without electricity. More than 19,000 federal and military personnel from 80 agencies deployed to the island. FEMA activated its surge capacity force. More than 640 employees from other federal agencies temporarily left their jobs in the U.S. to support the Puerto Rico response. Disaster recovery plans in place prior to the event. Plans in place on Puerto Rico are not readily available. Muckrock, through a Freedom of Information request, published the 2014 plan. Critics claim the plan relied too heavily on local officials and that FEMA did not expect to have to take the lead in the aftermath. Changes to the plans following the event. On March 20, 2018, Puerto Rico's Governor Ricardo Rossello presented a plan to review protocols and develop initiatives to prepare for the next hurricane season. 74 of the island's 78 municipalities developed their own recovery plans with the support and guidance of FEMA. Hurricane Maria Contingency Planning. Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Island Area Contingency Plan 2011 was developed in conjunction with the U.S. Coast Guard and the Environmental Protection Agency. It is part of a family of plans to be implemented in conjunction with the National Oil and Hazardous Substance Pollution Contingency Plan and the Caribbean Regional Contingency Plan to address removal of oil and hazardous substances. The plan does not address hurricanes. Response plans for a natural disaster. Part of the 2018 FEMA Hurricane Preparedness Plan suggests families 1. Build a kit with 10 days of supply of non-perishable foods for each person, store a gallon of water per person per day, and have medications, diapers, and first aid supplies. 2. Have a family communication plan. Have contact information, important phone numbers, and paperwork at all times. Stay informed. Keep a radio and batteries and download the FEMA app to receive severe weather alerts. Response team composition. Preparation for Puerto Rico's Maria response began 3 days before landfall on September 17, 2017. Some of the groups that responded included the American Red Cross, most branches of the U.S. military, FEMA, the U.S. Corps of Engineers, Department of Energy, Health and Human Services, the FAA, and even the U.S. Postal Service. Was the overall recovery effort successful? Both Hurricane Katrina and Maria became politicized in the aftermath. In both cases, Republican presidents and administrations were highly criticized by Democratic local officials and politicians. The recovery efforts in both events were massive in scale and mobilized a wide variety of organizations. The existing conditions in New Orleans and Puerto Rico were less than ideal prior to the storm. The levees were not in condition to sustain a Category 5 storm or the level of storm surge from Katrina. Puerto Rico was in dire financial straits prior to the storm and had defaulted on loan payments. The overall recovery effort for Katrina and Maria were successful in that people have returned and rebuilt. Both recovery efforts were highly criticized.
Najibullah Zazi tried to orchestrate a terrorist attack in September 2009 in the New York City subway system. If successful, this would have resulted in thousands of injuries or deaths. Zazi, with his accomplices, were unhappy with U.S. military actions in Afghanistan. They journeyed to Pakistan in 2008 to train to fight against American troops there, but were persuaded by Al-Qaeda to return to America to attempt this martyrdom suicide bombing attack. Zazi was a legal resident of the United States but was born in and remains a citizen of Afghanistan. After training in Pakistan in 2008, Zazi returned to the Denver, Colorado area in 2009. Zazi purchased chemicals containing triacetone triperoxide from beauty supply shops in the Aurora, Colorado area with known associates using stolen credit cards. This chemical can be used to construct dirty bombs. The FBI was alerted by British intelligence based on intercepted emails between Zazi and Al-Qaeda leader discussing the construction of explosives. His actions were fully monitored by the FBI prior to his attempt to target the New York City subway system. Zazi drove from Denver to New York City to finish construction of the explosive devices and carry out the attack on September 14, 2009. When he first arrived in New York on December 9th, he was pulled over under the false premise of a random drug search would allow to go on. Later, authorities towed his car and found his laptop contained notes on how to construct explosives. Zazi was notified by a local imam who had spoken to Zazi's father that police were asking questions about him. He panicked, aborted the mission, got rid of the explosives and detonators, and returned to Denver on September 12, 2009. After meeting with the FBI voluntarily in Denver, Zazi was finally charged on conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction on September 23, 2009. FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force teams are located in over 100 cities throughout the United States. The Denver FBI office was successful stopping the Zazi attempted subway bombing attack. This Joint Terrorism Task Force team was comprised of 20 cooperating agencies that investigated leads, gathered evidence, made arrests, and shared intelligence by communicating regularly. The task force found out where Zazi acquired the bomb-making materials and discovered a hotel room in Denver Zazi used where bomb-making residue was found. The Colorado Information Analysis Center brings different agencies together in order to gather, analyze, and share intelligence. It consists of representatives from all of the agencies in the Denver Joint Terrorism Task Force team. The New York Police Department and other law enforcement agencies were involved in Zazi's driving route from Colorado to New York. Unlike Hurricane Katrina, the various agencies had frequent and clear communications. Reporting structures and job responsibilities were clearly defined between the agencies. There was a disaster recovery plan in place that covered how to handle this type of event response quickly and effectively. The 2004 National Response Plan was updated in 2008 to become the National Response Framework after the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001 in New York City and Hurricane Katrina in 2005. This plan clearly addresses the roles and responsibilities of federal government agencies and community agency involvement in disaster response. The National Response Framework addressed the required response to the Zazi attempted act of terror, and as a result, there were no disaster recovery relief efforts, disaster aftermath, and contingency planning required for this act of terror.